To the racks every week, keep craving that rush that you get when you flip to the next page. Life is better when you're living between Wednesdays. Yes, say, got a massive back.
What's up, folks? I'm your host, Konrad, on Wednesday Night Reviews, and today I'm joined by David Lujan, and we're going to talk about their new comic, Nerida, which is going up on Kickstarter very soon. So, David, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here.
Glad to hear it. Yeah, first question, always very easy, at least I hope it is. For the folks out there who've maybe never heard your name, never seen your face, never heard of Yuriko, who is David?
I am a nobody from Austin, Texas. I just started in this comic book game about a year ago, and I hooked up with Lesser Known Comics, and Mark over there graciously let me in the door. So I got my foot in the door with a campaign for Yuriko, which is a Korean vampire story that I wrote and illustrated. And this is my second foray into trying to launch one of my own books. And Nerida is my, it's kind of like my pet project. Obviously, like all my social media is named after it and all that kind of stuff. And it's about a mermaid trapped on land.
Awesome. And just to confirm that, because I always like to make sure, so it's Nerida, not Nerida, correct?
I mean, I actually don't know. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, just like I'm probably pronouncing Yuriko wrong. I'm probably pronouncing my own name wrong. So however you feel comfortable is fine with me.
As long as we're all talking about the book, it's all good, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Then yeah, let's get into it. So, what is it? Tell me about the book.
Nerida or Nerida, I don't know. Hey, that kind of has a nice ring to it. Anyway, this book is about a mermaid who gets trapped on land, and this is issue 1 of a 10-part series. Hopefully, a 10-part series. I'm going to try and keep it within 10 comics. This is kind of to introduce everybody to the character, how she ends up on land, how she gets her, gets entangled with like the land dwellers who are there. She doesn't have a whole lot of experience with them. She hasn't really met anybody outside of, under the sea, as it were, at this point. So we get to meet her as the main character and kind of get introduced to the whole idea of a mermaid trapped on land. So that's what this book is about.
Cool. And already more questions are brewing, which is great. You mentioned it's going to be a 10-issue series. Most folks, when they start out their comics journey, they typically see like a 6 or 5 issue series or some one-shots. What made you want to go with 10 issues over anything else that you could have done?
Well, I've already got 6 issues drawn. So this has been something that I've been like trucking on for a good 3 years now. And I said that the Yuriko campaign, the whole vampire story thing, which I'm now more known for than Nerida, was kind of like a side. A side of mine where I thought, man, I'm tired of drawing mermaids and fairies, and this is I don't really know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing, but I need a break from this. I need something that's a little bit different. And I thought, I'll do like a really intense, black and white vampire story. That's like it's like a historical fiction. It's a far cry from the fantasy world that Nerida resides in, and all the mermaids and fairies and kings and whatnot. So I've already got 6 books in the can, basically. I'm going to go back and adjust them and color them and do all the things. But I know where the story is at 6 books, and I know that it's going to need 4 more volumes to be able to complete itself. So, and there's going to be a lot of editing involved, but that's why it's a 10-part thing. It's a little too epic. You know how like your first foray into storytelling ends up being this like pantheon of like ballooning crap when you should be just like, let me just tell a little chunk. Let me just tell a little story that makes sense. No. So this is my folly, as it were.
You know what? It's a common folly, and I think it's a good thing. What I've come to realize, and that happening it's pretty normal, is people get into comics or get an idea for a story in their head. They're really passionate about it. Like, you know what, this could be super cool. And they start writing it and making it. And it just keeps going. And like, oh, and this would be cool. And then this and then this.
Yeah, yeah.
And then most people, and this is the sad part, I think, most people get frustrated. They stop writing. They get lost in the sauce, so to speak. And they're just like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then it dies. You, however, have done the good thing, sir. If you've gone, I need a break, change lanes for a second, kudos. Because every professional comic book artist I've talked to, they're always like, yeah, start small, do 1 page, do 3-panel stories, do manageable little things. But
yeah,
I don't know, if the passion's there, man, run with it.
Yeah, totally. And I have done my share of. So the first ever Nerida story was like 6 pages, and it was done on paper. And I did it back in like, I think 2010 or 2011, something like that. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I kind of started writing it as I was drawing, and it kind of turned into about 6 pages. And I said, okay, that's a little mini comic story thing. That's cool. How does the character get here? Where does the character proceed from here? And then it kind of ballooned in both directions, and that's how the story got formed. And that was, over 10 years ago. So now I'm back with my full powers, and I feel like I'm able to illustrate better. I'm able to foresee changes in story and foreshadow things and all kinds of stuff much better now. As a writer, I've progressed. So I feel like this is the time for me to be able to put Nerida out in its proper form, and hopefully people will like it. So
that's so exciting.
Yeah.
I guess a big question I have for you then, given Nerida, she's been with you for 13 years or so, cooking away. Your brain's been able to digest it and work on getting it out there. What are you most excited for when it comes to the soon to be coming campaign and the book being launched and everything?
I just really want, man, it's one of those weird things where, like I said, it's a 10-book story, right? So by the 10th book, she's fighting this wizard, and there's like all sorts of, there's kingdoms of men from the south and the north that are fighting over like the land of the fairies, and like, yeah, King Oberon's involved, and there's like sex and incest and adultery and all sorts of crazy stuff happening. So I'm really excited to get to that part as quickly as possible, but I know that it's like the long reveal. It's kind of like what's that Miyazaki movie? Oh my God! Tales of Earthsea, where you're at the end and you're like, oh man, this is so epic! Oh my God, what's happening? But it is that super long reveal where you don't realize that the girl with the scar on her face is actually a dragon. But it's worth it. You know what I mean? That's what I'm excited about. I want to build as much hype as possible about this whole concept in the book and everything, so that people will be as pumped as I am in my mind about how cool it might be. If that makes sense.
It is cool. If you're this excited, it is cool, and we just got to get the people that like what you like seeing it. Then one for yourself, because I've also seen Tales of Earthsea. I've seen a lot of Ghibli movies, or Miyazaki movies, I should say.
Yeah.
If you haven't, Ursula K. Le Guin's Tales of Earthsea, the whole thing, it's like collected editions of it are like that thick. Like I'd have to hold it. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's a lot, but it's really good read, by the way. That being said, for your book, one thing I did want to ask was, why 10 issues? Like, if you've got 6 done, why not release 5 as a graphic novel? Is there a particular reason? Is it, you like the feel of 24, 26-page comics? Like, what was the format choice there?
Well, I actually talked to Mark over at LKC about this, because when I approached him, it was with the Yuriko campaign first, and that's going to be like a 5-part kind of miniseries, or what I would call a miniseries. And I mentioned that I had so many of these Nerida books already in the can, And I said, well, why don't I do it as like a collected edition and, like perfect bound and people can just buy it right off the bat. And he was like, you can. He said, however, if you put them out as single issues subsequent, you'll have more success drumming up excitement about it over a period of time. I did one campaign for Yuriko, and already, whenever I draw a picture of Yuriko and have her promote whatever I want her to promote, people love it. It's getting like tons of likes and people are sharing it, blah, 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 blah. It's because they kind of know about it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm hoping to do the same thing with Nerida. As it trucks along, it'll just build steam. The hope is that at some point in time, also, I definitely need to like trim the fat. I need to edit these books, right? Because I've got 6 books, but book 2 was like, 45 pages long because I didn't know anything about. It's got to be multiples of 4, you dork. I didn't know. I was just drawing. I was like, this seems like a good stopping point. No, it's a terrible stopping point. So there's that, but also I feel like once I get in, if I've got 5 books, then I can release a collected edition of the first 5, and that can be a supplemental thing to boost, issue 6 and get people stoked about it, that kind of thing. Because I saw actually as a kid in the 80s and 90s that Akira was doing that. And he was taking forever. Otoma was taking forever to make the next issue of Akira, and they would just promote it, and all of us were like, when's it gonna drop? It's like sneakerheads waiting at the shoe store for the next Jordans now. That was us being dorky at the comic book store waiting for the next Akira volume to come out. So that's what I'm hoping to do. I don't know how much hype or how excited people will be about it or whatever, but that's kind of the long game. So.
Perfect. And you know what? If that's what Mark has recommended for you, do it. I have no doubt. I've seen what that guy's capable of doing when it comes to getting things backed and the promotion game, and he's stellar at it. So cool.
He also knows everybody. Anytime I'm like, oh yeah, I met this guy named so and so, and he's like, oh yeah, Robert, I know that guy. I met him at blah 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 con.
Yeah, and you're like,
how do you know? This guy lives in Australia. How do you know him? But,
what's been getting really wild for me about Mark is I'll have random people be like, hey dude, will you have me on your show and talk about my thing that I'm doing? I'm like, yeah. And then like 4 weeks later, that person will tweet out, oh, lesser known comics, blah, 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 I'm with them now. And I'm like, Mark.
Yeah. Mark is he's a good guy. And actually the way I hooked up with lesser known comics was pretty funny because I, again, didn't know what I was doing. I was just drawing every day and trying to make comics as often as possible when I wasn't working swinging a hammer as a carpenter. And I was like, I should send stuff out to people who were like more important than me, who are connected somehow. And so I was just like, I sent him like a DM on Instagram. It was like, hey, you should put out my comic. I'm cool and you'd like it. And it was just like total thumb in the eye kind of. I didn't know how to bring a message to send to someone at all. And then he got back to me and was like, wow, this looks really amazing. I don't know how I passed it up. Yes, do you want to talk? And blah, 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 blah. And I leaned pretty heavily on my art skills there because my email skills are just like, I'm all thumbs. Although when you're texting someone, aren't you always all thumbs?
Yeah. I mean, as long as you're not doing this, I think you're okay.
I'm not that old yet. Someday.
So, you know what? We'll go this way. So we've talked about your work for about 15 minutes now or so. So the important part, we've talked up Nerida, the story of a wonderful mermaid who ends up trapped on land. It's going to be 10 issues. How can people get it, David?
Well, I happen to have a Kickstarter that's launching February 14th on Valentine's Day, and I can think of nothing more perfect to get for your loved one than a comic about a mermaid. So yeah, February 14th, the Kickstarter launches. It runs through March 6th, I want to say. It runs for 20 days, but you should sign up now so you get a notification so that you know that when it's going to drop. But yeah, that's the best way to get the comic book. Also, I'm up on Global Comics. If it's yeah, I don't know how many of you guys out there have checked it out, but Global Comics is pretty awesome. It's like a really awesome alternative to Tapas or Webtoons or any of those things. I mean, you can actually put real comics up there with great content, blah 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 blah. They're also really good dudes, all of them who are running it. I've got the first 6 pages of this up. If you want to go preview it, Nerida, so you can see, kind of get a feel for what's going on, and leaves you a little cliffhanger. You're like, oh no, what's going to happen? At least hopefully you are, because then you'll back the Kickstarter and then you can find out what happens.
I love it, and there will be links down below for everything. So we've got about 6 days from time of recording. We're on February 8th. Yeah, February 8th today. It's 6 days. Ideally, we'll have this out just prior to when it launches, which would be great. But yes, links down below for pre-registration. If you're watching this on the 14th or after, if you click the pre-registration link, it'll just load the page. You can check out the comic, click support, pick a tier. One thing I always like to ask David is, sometimes people get really afraid about pledging money, right? So they're always their concern is, I don't want to give money if it's not going to hit its total, if it's not going to get made, if I'm never going to get my comic, right? Because I've heard that fear a lot with Kickstarters, and sometimes that keeps people away, which, in my own experience, I've backed 25 projects, and I've only not received one yet, but we still have updates. So, to help quell some of the fears, I guess to start with, what is the absolute minimum, and maybe you don't have it worked out yet, but what's the absolute minimum someone could pay or pledge and get at least just the comic, if nothing else?
If you the first thing up there is like $5, and you will get a digital PDF the moment that the Kickstarter is done, the moment that the campaign is done, March 6th, March 7th. Bloop, I'm sending all of those out. To assuage people's fears about whether or not the book is going to get done, there are factors that I feel like are at play here that maybe are not at play in other people's campaigns. Namely, that yours truly, this guy, I'm the guy who's writing it, drawing it, lettering it, coloring it, printing it, fulfilling it, and all of that stuff. So, trust me. No, I'm just joking. The book is already fully done. No, I'm just saying. Sometimes I've backed campaigns myself, and then they send me updates, and they're like, "Cool, we're working on the comic book. It's going to be done hopefully by this day, and then we're going to go to print, and then we're going to this, and then we're going to go to that." And I totally understand that you want to get funded before you make the thing, because you can't afford to hire the artist, or you can't afford to get the thing printed or whatever. My whole game plan and the long game for all of this was to, with the Yuriko campaign, my first campaign got funded like 400% or something.
Yes, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I was stoked about it. So that provided me with what I consider the disposable income to be able to fund this thing, right? So that the money that went to there, I'm now rolling it into the print cost and all that kind of stuff for this campaign, because I'm going to be doing cons, I'm going to be doing all kinds of crazy stuff this coming year. So I can't afford not to print these books. They're going to get printed. There's no way that they're not going to get printed, and they've already been made. Like, it's already been drawn and colored and finished, and it's ready to go. So you don't have to worry about any of that. Like, my colorist is not going to flake on me. I'd have to flake on myself. So.
Beautiful. That's what I like to hear. And for the folks at home, I've actually read the whole book. I had the digital copy so I could review it and do this whole thing. So it's real. It's made. It's done. It's waiting for you. $5 down below. Then you know what? I want to talk a little bit about you, David.
Yes.
So from the research I've done, what I've looked in on you with, previously you've written Yuriko with Lesser Known Comics, which, again, black and white story, really cool. You've now done Nerida, I think I'm just going to call it Nerida.
Yeah, it's fine.
You also, as you mentioned earlier, are a carpenter by day.
Yeah. Vigilante by night.
Yeah. Based on the records and the guitar, and I believe you're sitting beside a piano, you're a musician. Yeah. So you're, in all the ways that one can conceivably be, you are creative. Did you paint the painting that's behind you?
No, but I did. There are other paintings in here that I did. But that big one on this one right here.
Yeah.
That one's. I wish I could just like pick this thing up and like take you on a tour of all the artwork, because my wife and I used to own a small art gallery, and so we ended up with some just amazing art in our possession that from all different people that showed at the gallery. I mean, we had hundreds of artists come through there, and just it was magical. But that one is by a friend of mine named Ryan Davis. He's still an active painter here in Austin, Texas, and he was in school with me. We both went to University of Texas, and we were in the printmaking department together. So that's who that guy is. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, that's so cool. Okay, so now I have more questions, but the main one I wanted to ask. So you're a carpenter, so you understand woodworking and how to build things. You're a musician, a painter, a curator of art. With so many different creative pursuits, how do you feel that they have impacted your storytelling ability and how you've made your comics? And did some of them have nothing to do with it, like music having nothing to do with comics, or did maybe in unexpected ways sort of that ability tie in and help you create your world?
I think that the music thing has always cross-pollinated with the art stuff. For starters, when I was in college in printmaking, when you get up into the upper class, like higher level lithography or intaglio or things like that, you start having critiques, and they not only want to critique your printing ability, like have you learned how to properly set the press and pull multiples that are identical and all this kind of stuff, but they also start asking you about your artwork as well, like what's the meaning behind this. And I found a really easy way out of that without having to connect to other artists or give them some kind of ethereal whatever. I say, oh, this piece of art was based on a song that I wrote, and instantly they were like, oh, well, that's cool. Okay, they didn't know what to do with that, so I just kept going with that, and I kept making imagery for the music that I was writing for the band that I was in at the time. So it's always kind of cross-pollinated in that way. And there's tons of water imagery in all the songs for my latest album that I'm putting out this summer.
Congratulations!
Thanks. Yeah, I'm stoked about it. So. Yeah, I mean, it's they all work hand in hand. Carpentry taught me, well, how to build a house, but carpentry sort of taught me what it's like to have a real job as a real actual grown up, and how terrible that is, and how I never really wanted to do that if I don't have to, and how drawing comic books, no matter how like grueling it can be, because it can be like mentally straining, but no matter how mentally straining and no matter how tired you're like, oh, I can't stare at the screen, or like my hand hurts, it's cramping, dude, it's always better than digging a hole under someone's house and dragging a saw so that you can maybe cut your hand off because you're upside down and backwards and doing this. Any day of the week I'll draw you 50 pages of comics, and chain me to a table, don't feed me for days, and it's better than being a carpenter. So that's how those things work. Yeah.
Amazing. You know what? Hey, if that's what gets you in gear, and the disdain, the hate for the 9-to-5 grind, especially doing carpentry, because damn, that's hard work. If that's what gets your butt in gear and gets you drawn, great. Anyone who's watched more than like 2 episodes of my show, they've heard me quote this, so I apologize. But one of the people I've spoken with and have listened to speak a lot is David Finch. And
oh yeah, whoa,
yeah. So specifically, like it comes up when people ask him, well, how do I get into comics and stuff? Because people ask him all the time, right? And he's been super consistent with this answer, which is just basically, and I'm paraphrasing here, but shut up and draw. Because he's said time and time again, he's like, I don't care how talented you are and how complex or interesting a single big drawing is. If you can't hammer out 30 pages a month, you cannot be a comic artist, because that's the job. So, hey, if you know what, having done carpentry is the fire that gets you able to do that, cool, go for it.
Yeah, totally. I recently got hired to do a comic with a guy named Morgan Quaid, who had I don't know if you know Morgan, but he did Enmity he just did a Kickstarter for that. He's also got another one coming up that's like Folly something or other. It's kind of a D&D mashup with like a bunch of different artists. I'm hopefully going to do a couple pages for him there.
Oh, sweet.
But he proposed this thing called Dusk Witch to me, and it was like 23 pages, and he was like, at your leisure, if I'm in no hurry, I don't have a publisher for it or anything like that. And I was like, at my leisure, boom, let's get this knocked out. Like for me, a page a day is no big deal. So I just blasted through it, and he's like, whoa, okay, well, that got done. And I'm like, yeah, man, what's next? You know what I mean? Because it's that grown-up work ethic. It really is. It's just in general, like this is the job, so you do the job. You know what I mean? But it really felt good to be able to say, yeah, I can theoretically, if I wasn't being pulled in all different directions, make a comic a month, no problem. Like I could. Somebody's got to hire me to do that instead of hiring me to nail pieces of wood together and cut them smaller and then nail them back together. Because that's dumb. That's essentially what carpentry is.
Oh, yeah.
Just take pieces of wood and cut them smaller and then you nail them back together, just in different shapes and forms.
Yeah. So, oh man, just questions. It's awesome. I love when I get an interview like this, David, because you're engaged and you're excited, right? And I love that because we can get into some cool stuff. You know what? Then I'll ask you about your process. So you've mentioned earlier you've done printmaking. So for those out there, printmaking basically, and please, you'll be the expert far among myself, but basically you take some sort of surface, whether that's stone and acid etching it, whether it's lino cut and it's like this gooey stuff you cut. If it's actually wood, you put ink on it, you put your page on it, you press and peel off. And I'm really simplifying the hell out of this, but
that's what it is. You smush stuff on stuff.
Yeah. So given you have that experience and from your degree and everything like that, and clearly it sounds like you know quite a bit to do it, did any of that play into how you created your comic? Or is it totally explain?
Absolutely. So first of all, with artwork, I can't touch the artwork, physically cannot touch the artwork, or I will ruin it, right? Which raises a point because I got the idea from Mark to do sketch covers for this Nerida campaign. So you can, if you want to, sign up for an add-on and get an I will draw something directly on your comic book with a marker and send it to you. So if you like my artwork and you want me to do that, I will draw something. And I'm taking requests. So if you're like, yeah, draw Thanos, sure, no problem.
Why not?
I can't reproduce Thanos, but I can sketch him all day long and I can send him to you in the mail. But anyway, that being said, right, it's this idea of stencils. So, like screen printing, for example, you create a stencil where you can push the ink through these holes and then it hits the paper and it creates the image, right? It's working with positive and negative space. So for something like Nerida, for example, I'll draw it traditionally like you would draw something for a comic book where, you got your pencils, you drop them to your blue or whatever tone you want, and then you ink on top of it. But then what I do is I take basically a halftone, I drop the opacity to about 30%, and then I ink in where all the shadows are going to go. And that's my stencil, as though I was going to print that, right?
Okay.
So I'm creating a mask where all the shadows are going to be on the figure, right? And in the background and all kinds of stuff. And you can do that as complex as you want. I'm pretty caveman, so it's like, these are all the shadows. Okay, let's do it. Then with the advent of digital, like an iPad, which is what I illustrate on, you can select that area.
Yay.
Yeah, yeah. You can select that area, and then you can go in and you can do your washes, and you can go in and you can do your colors, and you can go in and you can do all kinds of stuff. So the concept of like illustrating through a portal or some sort of stencil where you're blocking out areas and then adding to or subtracting from, but creating these kind of hard shapes to operate within to define your space and to define your character and your shadows is something that I definitely got from printmaking. Because in printmaking, creating a fade of color from one color to the next color, you have to do like a rainbow roll on screen printing where you're like laying out your ink. You got orange and it goes, and then you go purple and they overlap, and then you move them together and you squish it and it creates a fade. It's called a rainbow roll. But doing that same thing with lithography or intaglio or anything, it's very, very involved. And it usually what you'll do is instead of doing those fades, you will print those colors one at a time and figure out where they're going to go before you even do it. So it's this idea of plotting things out, and that lends itself to the organization of working with layers when you're illustrating comic books, for me personally. But maybe I'm a weirdo. I probably am. So, yeah.
Well, actually, what it reminds me of, like almost like nail on the head reminds me of, is flatting. Do you? I mean, based on the sound of your process, basically you're flatting, and then you're just doing it with the actual color of what the character will be colored later on. Are you familiar with flatting, first and foremost?
I should be. I probably.
Okay. For the folks out there, for yourself included, David, because it's a term I hadn't come along until about 6 months ago, and I'm like, I've been reading comics for a decade, and I've just heard of this.
I've heard of it. I just don't know what it technically is.
Yeah, so basically flatting is, so you take an image. So hypothetically, if right now I was a comic panel, right? So say my hands, because they're depths and stuff, a flatter would come in and take the entirety of my arms to my fingertips, make it like white or orange or whatever. My shirt would be just, well, it's black, so probably just black. My face could be like pink. The wall behind me could be like purple, just to make like super contrast them. And then when the colorist comes in to do more detailed coloring, they have an idea of, okay, this is a thing and it should be roughly this kind of color, and then they can actually go in and go do detail. And that's kind of what it reminds me of when, like, from a lino or from a print perspective, you're like, oh, here's my shape, here's where my shade's gonna be, okay, color the thing. It kind of sounds like that. Yeah.
So I am familiar with that concept. For me personally, that slows me down, going through to do that, right? So, but the thing is, I know that as I'm drawing, like if I have a foreground, background, middle ground in an image or in a panel or something, I know that those things, like the main character is going to be a different color than, like Nerida is going to be a humanoid form with humanoid colors. And the shed that's behind her where she's standing is going to be all these gray tones and all this kind of stuff. So I will ink her separately, knowing that she will become a closed loop, and then I don't have to go in and I don't have to flat her entire shape. Right? If there's a really complex form that I need to block out, or mask out like that, then I will flat it, just so I can select it and then maybe add a stroke around the whole thing to turn it into a sticker or something like that. But normally, after I've done all of my shading, with the process the aforementioned process, then I do it all with like washes and stuff. So they're not solid, opaque things when I go back and I color in all the stuff after I've selected it. Then I can paint underneath it and I can color underneath it, which has been really fun for me, figuring that out, going, oh, these shadows are going to affect these colors. So she's just pink, but she's pink with all these shadows. That's cool, you know, and it kind of creates it as you go. So I'll just paint the entire thing,
Yeah.
And I won't even select areas, and I won't even mask off things. I'll just be like, nah, I'm just gonna blah 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 blah. And it's actually really funny to see. I really want to print like a page, like a sketch page that shows process of it in the back of one of the books in the future. Maybe I will, where it's just like, okay, here's the pencils, these are the rough inks, this is the shadow thing layer, and then this is the paint blobs that happen underneath because they look like kind of weird and crude and like a little kid did it. When you take off all of the details stuff, it's fun. So yeah.
You know what? It just so it's absolutely apparent, you're doing all this digitally, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. So it's one of the marvels of the digital age, and not that I particularly think digital is better than analog when it comes to art or anything like that. It's just different. Yeah. But yes, I've seen when artists have taken like this super detailed, perfect drawing, and they're like, okay, hold on, let's take off all the pencil marks, let's take off the shadowing, and then like my head where it'd be like defined and you'd have hair drawn becomes like this amorphous giant blob of just, they knew I needed to be pale, so they went, peachy light.
Hey,
there you go.
Pink, yeah. Pink blob with some highlights on the eyes.
Yeah. Yep. So I absolutely, you know what, maybe, who knows, maybe when the 10 issues are done and it gets collected, you can put a bunch of pages in the back to be like, BTS, here's how we did everything, or like you said, maybe it'll end up in the back of an issue. Either way, super cool, and I hope you can do it because it's fun to see the process.
Yeah, and it's for this book, there's I think 2 or 3 pages of sketches back there. So I've got some sketches of a character named Shiki, the bird rider who rides a peregrine falcon. I've got some sketches of, I think, the brothel where Nerida kind of gets captured and has to escape from, stuff like that. So it's that's also kind of like a little teaser trailer for what is to come. Hopefully, people will be like, "What? There's going to be fairies on birds? That's cool," So, anyway,
another thing I want to make sure I ask then is about the book itself. About my apologies. Say the book's title again, or the character's name.
Nerida.
One thing I want to ask about Nerida is, and to my much appreciation, because I'm a huge fan of Ghost in the Shell, through the entire first issue, and I'm assuming some chunk of the second issue, if not more, she's entirely nude. So this is not, in North America, a book for children. In Europe, they're a lot differently mentally, but it's not really a kid's book because she's nude head to toe. But what I highly appreciated was, much like in Ghost in the Shell, so if you're out there watching and you haven't seen it yet, the actual movie Ghost in the Shell, not the TV series and stuff, which they're good too, but the main character in that series is a human mind inside of a prosthetic body, totally machine, and as a result, Motoko is her name. Sometimes she's naked, but it's not sexy. It's not, she's like, ooh, my. No, this is my body. It's a mechanical functioning thing. Move. And in your book, it feels not detached or anything because she's very much, it's her body and she likes her body, but she's nude for it. And it makes sense because she's a mermaid. She's come out of the water. She's shed her mermaid skin. And so she wouldn't have clothes under the sea. And she's comfortable and she walks around and she's doing her thing. Did that sheerly happen out of the logic of, well, you wouldn't have cloth clothes under the sea, or was there a purpose to it? Why that choice?
So it came about from the logic of not having clothes under the sea. Why would you? Ain't nobody putting seashells on their bosoms under the sea. They're not gonna do that. It just creates drag. It's a real problem when you're swimming. So that was part of it. But the other part of it is that the book is very much about the male gaze, and it's also about this concept of innocence lost, right? So she's a person who, like you said, and she lands on land. She's just walking around. She doesn't feel like she needs to cover up because why would she? She never has before, and then all of a sudden some things happen to her in the first issue, and she's like, oh my God, what are you doing? Like, get off me! That's terrible. And it's just she's hit right away with this. It's sort of like a coming of age sort of thing, or a loss of innocence sort of thing. And I wanted to transform her from being this person who is basically naive to the ways of land dwellers, to be introduced to it in a very, quick and kind of brutal way. And then it just kind of snowballs from there. If later on in the story, like I said, she gets captured and taken to a house of ill repute, blah blah blah, where they're like, oh, no one's deflowered her. Let's sell her to the highest bidder. So she gets instantly kind of embroiled in all that kind of stuff. That's actually a side note to the story, but I think it's going to have a lot to do with her personality once she comes into her own, and once she's like fully ensconced with the fairies, and she's on the hunt for her skin, and she's going to go kick some ass, and she's going to get what's hers. But she has to transform into that person. She doesn't, because nobody. I kind of. I don't really like reading stories where the hero is fully formed. Yeah. It's like, why is this chick is badass? That's cool, but why is she badass? How does she end up this way? No one is born that way. Everybody has like insecurities and fears and like self-doubt and all that kind of stuff. So I really want to tackle those issues with this character, and hopefully it comes across as not just being me drawing naked ladies, because that's also fun to do. But yeah,
I mean, yeah. One thing, I guess, and I don't mean to deep dive here, and it may go a little farther, but a classic trope sort of within the hero's journey is often crossing some sort of body of water, and body being a transformative aspect, metaphorically, that signals, going from naive, often it's a knight, so like a naive squire, to a knight who's now ready to fight and go slay the dragon or whatever.
Yeah.
Nerida here is literally the opposite. She's a character born in and of the water, coming onto dry land, where she's going to face these things. Was there any, I guess consciously, did you play with that idea? Because she's getting the opposite of the hero's journey in this case, because she's kind of getting put through the ringer real quick.
Yeah, she gets put through the ringer real quick, and as far as like having a transformative experience, it does happen, but it's going to be by air as opposed to by water, because she falls in with some fairies, and there's two factions of fairies in the story. There are normal fairies that have like wings and like butterfly wings, and they flat around, and they're chatty Cathy, and they're like highfalutin or whatever. And then there's the flightless fairies, and they have like a symbiotic relationship with the birds of the forest. So there's a lot of flight that happens as soon as she falls in with these fairies, and that's going to be the transformative thing for her.
Interesting.
Yeah, man, issue 6 is going to be so bonkers. I'm telling you.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love the excitement, David, so much.
It's so good.
You know what? We've covered a lot. So again, as a quick recap, your book coming out is called
Nerida.
And on
Landlocked. Book 1, Landlocked. Sorry.
Ooh, I like that. And February 14th is the launch date of your Kickstarter, where anyone can get the book for $5. It's actually ready to go. So come March 9th or 8th, when the campaign is over, the day after, if they bid or they don't bid, they support you with $5, they will get this beautiful comic.
Yeah.
Awesome.
The PDF, so that they'll get a digital comic right away. If you want the actual comic, it's only $10, and I will send you a beautifully printed, from Comics Wellspring, the premier comic printing entity of our time. I will send you that as soon as we get those hot off the press. And there's variant covers,
Ooh.
and there's sketch covers, and there's just all sorts of things you can get. But yeah,
I love it. So $5 gets you the digital, which I mean, most people, especially if you're international, will want. $10, that's more my speed with the physical, which awesome. Then you know what? Oh, where can people follow you?
All of my social media stuff is at Nerida Comic, NERIDACOMIC, and it's all the same whether you're on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or Global Comics, or if you want to send me an email, it's just neridacomic@gmail.com. So that's how you find me.
Beautiful, nice and easy. All right, so we've talked a ton about your comic. I like to talk a little bit about you.
Okay.
So, as mentioned, you're a carpenter, you're an artist, you've been a curator, musician, you do all the fun stuff. Very, how do I say this nicely? Very traditionally cool or fascinating or on the end of carpentry, manly kind of a thing. It is. Come on, it is. When it comes to comic book creators, though, I often find there are also people who read comics, are nerds, have some sort of collection. So, for you, David, what is your nerdy collected thing? If you had to take your whole collection of all of your stuff and say, this is the one piece that if I can only show you one thing, here's it, here's what I love. What is that thing?
So there's a line in the song that says, "You can have my house, you can have my car, you can have my everything except for my guitar." I have a 1968 Harmony H74. It's a hollow body with double F holes. It's got 3 microphonic pickups. It's all stock with a Bigsby whammy bar on it, and it is like all scuffed up with belt buckle rash, and it's covered in dried blood from playing punk shows, and it's missing some little plastic things on some of the switches. It keeps perfect tune. I've had to take the neck off of it a bunch of times. I had to shim it a couple of times. I took the fretboard off and then glued it back on. So yeah, you can steal all my everything, all the gobbledygook I own, but don't take that guitar, man. That's it. Yeah, for me.
That's amazing. I will definitely ask you to send me a picture of that if possible to put up. If not, I will find an image of that type of guitar.
I'll send you a picture, sure.
Awesome, thank you. You mentioned it just stays in tune. For the folks out there, I play a little bit of guitar myself. For whatever reason, and this is going to sound a little weird, my G string always comes untuned, probably because I play blues and I like to bend that string the most. It happens. Yeah. It's annoying because I got to tune it just about every day. The fact that you have a guitar that is that old, 68, so it's working on 60 years, and stays in tune is awesome. I think it's just because older guitars I think they were built better.
Yes, no, they are. I agree with that, but I swapped out the tuning heads.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. I swapped out the tuning heads for some Waverleys, and those have a 16-to-1 ratio on them, so that you can really fine tune. The other thing that I do that I always recommend is to use pencil lead on the nut and on the bridge, wherever the string is going to go over something, right? If it's rubbing on something and it needs to move, like if you're bending it, it's going to move a little bit wherever it strikes the nut and wherever it strikes the bridge. But if you put some pencil lead on there, the graphite will actually lubricate the string so it doesn't get caught and want to stay where it is once it's moved. So that's part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Also stretching your strings when you put on fresh pair of strings. You stretch them out really well. Being careful not to put too much tension on the guitar or whatever, or just break the string. But you stretch them out ahead of time so they don't keep going out of tune, right after you change out your strings. So, yeah, those are some things.
Beautiful. General guitar tips. Also, good to know about the graphite. I will be doing that literally after this. Awesome. And big important question. Like I said earlier, often folks who create comics read comics. I appreciate not everyone reads comics, especially if you're busy working your day job plus creating comics. So whether it's an actual book, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, a comic, a graphic novel, a webtoon, manga, what have you, what are you reading?
Oh my God! Right now, whew, let's see. I'm reading Battling Boy by Paul Pope, um, which is amazing because I already read The Rise and Fall of House of West. That was by David Rubin. That was like the prequel that Paul Pope wrote after he did Battling Boy, which I don't know if you're aware of these graphic novels, but they're awesome. They're all, I think, out on First Second Publishing.
Okay.
Those are great. What else am I reading? I've got a Hellboy collected edition that I picked up, Strange Tales or something like that, where he ends up going below the sea, and there's some mermaids in that one. I'm like, yes, and Mike Mignola just knows how to set up a panel like nobody else. It's just crazy.
Oh, doesn't he though?
Yeah. Recently, also, I met Dan Price, who is a local Austinite too, and he has a comic called Bigfoot Knows Karate, and he gave me a copy of his book, so I've been plowing through that thing. It's awesome. It's fun to read comics from other indie creators. I also got volume 1 and 2 of Retribution, which I don't know if you know about that one. From his Instagram is Cheesy Comics Shop if you're looking for it, but man, it's drawn spectacularly. It's done really, really well. He was like asking me, he's like, "Hey, would you, give me notes? Like, what do you think about like the storyline and the blah 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 and like the artwork and this, that, and the other?" And I'm like, "You asking me? I don't know anything, man. Like, I know how to keep my guitar in tune, but sure, oh, okay." I'm just reading it, going, "Man, this is cool." I'm gonna try and put on my glasses and be like, well, if I was going to critique anything, I would say that, I have to think of something. But so I've been trying to read a lot of indie books from indie creators. But yeah, man, I just go and I hit the library, any Ed Brubaker book that I can find. That's hard to say. Any Ed Brubaker, it's like saying toy boat. Any book by him I can find, I just pick it up if I haven't already read it, or just read it again. Yeah, so I read pretty much nothing but comics, actually. Yeah.
Nice.
So
I love it. Actually, cool tidbit. Is it Criminal? I believe it's Criminal. Amazon's picking it up, or I believe they're discussing picking it up as a TV show.
What?
Yeah. That was announced 2-3 days ago. Someone tweeted out, they're like, yeah, Amazon in discussion with Ed Brubaker about turning Criminal into a show. And I'm like, okay.
That could be cool. See, that's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Like, a lot of times when people ask me, like, oh, so you're a comic book artist? So, like, what is it? Like, you got, like, some superheroes wearing tights and, like, big boobs and everybody's blasting each other's superpowers. I'm like, well, yeah, but also there's other types of comic books that are, like, hard crime fiction. There's The Fade Out. There's John Constantine. There's just all like there's so much out there that has nothing to do with superheroes. I'm not knocking superheroes. I love me some superheroes. I haven't had the opportunity to draw a superhero book yet. I have one in the works though.
Ooh.
Yeah. But yeah. So man, I have to. I feel like I'm constantly educating people. Like, oh man, you should check out so and so and so and so. And I feel like this big nerd who knows all about comics and nobody else does, or something. And I'm like, I'll just be quiet now. Sorry, I kept going. That kind of thing.
Never be quiet for me, please. It's something that, and again, I appreciate the whole idea of you get your little bubble, right? With social media and stuff, it's real easy to get into a bubble. So I like doing what I do and going to cons and just being open to talking to people because, there's so many people who are like, oh, comic books, that's Marvel and Batman and Captain America, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, they're there. Like, here's Batman, lots of Batman. But, like, you got Tights, which is all about a whole world where people get a little bit kooky and try to be heroes, so they become vigilantes and they get hurt. You've got like Commander Rao, which is, basically it's a war story about a person trying to get revenge. Like there's so much out there. So yeah. And then you get stuff like Ed Brubaker doing his various series which are extremely beautiful. They're all crime noirs. There's way more out there than capes.
Yeah. I also like delving into like old comics. You know what I mean?
Oh.
Like nothing's coming off the like Prince Valiant. You know what I mean? Like old school stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Where you're just going way back before comics were really syndicated and they were all kind of cartoon strips. And how did they execute that chunk of the story within 5 panels to make you want to keep reading it every week? And you would wait, or it would come out, I don't know how frequently those things came out back before my time. But I do remember every Sunday, you'd get the Calvin and Hobbes comic or something like that, and you're waiting for the next one to come and blah, blah, blah. So I like to give respect to those and go backwards. The same thing with music, like so much good music was made before I was born, or it was happening while I was alive, but I didn't really know what was going on. I was a dweeb wearing a windsuit, and I was going to kindergarten. Like, I didn't know that there was cool breakdancers who were also wearing windsuits. So I had to find out about that later. You know what I mean? So, going backwards is just as important as going forwards, I think, with any sort of thing that you're trying to discover that's creative, whether it's comic books or movies or music or any of that stuff, because there's just so much to be learned. And sometimes you can get influences from back in the day that ain't nobody ever heard of before, and then you incorporate it into your art or your music or whatever. People are like, man, you sound so creative and new and different. I don't understand what's going on. It's like, yeah, because I don't sound like Nicki Minaj and Arcade Fire, who are not even new artists nowadays. But, like, I guess Lil Nas X, isn't he current? Or I don't know anymore.
I have a scary feeling that he's not even current anymore.
He's probably not. He's passe. He's flash in the pan.
Yeah. You know what? I'm stuck in give me blues, give me folk, 1950s onward. So I feel you.
Yeah. No, I frequently will give up on modern music. I'll be like, this is all crap, just throwing my headphones down and be like, just, put on a BB King record. It's gonna be good, So I do that. I get in a bit of a hissy fit over modern music letting me down, and then I go back to the good stuff and I listen to it. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to give it a try, and then I'll discover something great that just came out last year that I didn't even know about. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's just there's just so damn much out there. No matter what you're into, like literally, I don't care what you're into. There's so damn much out there now. Like you said, it's important to go back just as much as it is forward, because I promise you've missed something that's already happened. And there's stuff coming out right now, right at this second of recording, that's just going to blow minds. And we're all like, yeah, it doesn't exist right now to me.
Yeah. Just like that new comic I heard. What's it called? Nerida, I think. Yeah, that's that new comic that no one's heard about. That's like going to shatter everybody's brains. I'm joking, but
it's the next fantasy epic. It's gonna get there, David.
Yeah, we'll see. That's what my wife says. I'm like, I think this is it, man. This is gonna be so cool. And she's like, I'll believe it when I see it. Just get it done. You
know what though? As we've talked about, the get it done part, that's what's important, and you're clearly doing it, which is awesome. You know what? One last easy question before we finish up with my same last two I ask everyone. Are you, in your head, when you think of yourself, are you David Carpenter, David musician, David comic book writer, comic book artist, comic book creator? Because you do so many things. When you conceptualize yourself, what are you?
Ooh. I hadn't really thought of that. I guess I'm just a handyman. I fix stuff. I fix things all the time. Anything that breaks. I mean, my phone, this phone had a cracked screen when my brother-in-law gave it to me, and so I took it apart, took the screen off, and fixed it. And then the battery died, so I took it apart, swapped out the battery, put the screen back on, and fixed it. It's just like stuff like that. My neighbor didn't have any brakes left in the front of her car, and she was like, "I think I need to get the brakes fixed." And I was like, "Yeah, you do. These are the parts you need." Blah 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 blah. She was like, "Wait, I'm not going to do it." She was like, "Can I hire you to do it?" And I was like, "I've never changed the brakes on this make and model of car, but I did it anyway because I'm a handyman."
Badass.
So it's just problem solving. I like to solve problems. So whether it's comics or it's fixing a car or it's fixing your iPhone or it's building a house, it's all just problem solving. It's like, okay, if I want this to happen, how do I get there? What puzzle pieces fit? Figuring it out ahead of time, getting everything lined up, and then trying to get them to dovetail the way you want them to, so everything is successful. I guess. I don't know if that answered your question.
I love it. No, you know what? When I ask that question, so many people like to answer different ways. It's just one I like to ask and hear what people feel. So yeah, my famous last two. We've kind of already touched on what you're currently reading. So what I would say is, or what I'd ask instead is, what would you recommend? If someone's say never read a comic before, what comic or graphic novel or whatever would you say start here?
Ooh. Don't start where I started. I started in the 90s and nobody knew what was going on. There was some real weird stuff going on. Rob Liefeld? Yeah. Turok. That's a good comic. Don't start there either. Geez, man. That's tough. That's super tough. Okay. All right. Okay. Yes. This is what you would start with. You would start with Batman Year One by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli.
Ooh.
That's where you start because it gets you into most people know of comic books as being a Kate's game, right? You know, superheroes. And they know about Batman and they know about Superman and they know that they fight crime and all that kind of stuff and all the different things in the histories, and a lot of people know about that. Mm-hmm. But what that comic book is kind of a gateway drug to get you into graphic novels. It's a gateway drug to get you into the idea that there are stories that humanize these superheroes. It's just as much about James Gordon as it is about Batman, or Bruce Wayne, as it were. But that book, beautifully illustrated, of course, too, written by Frank Miller. I mean, the script is just like immaculate, right? So that book, for me, started leading me down a rabbit hole where I was like, what else is there in the world that's like this? I can't find anything that's like this. There's got to be more, you know what I mean? And I started really digging. And then every time I would come across something cool, like Ed Brubaker or something like that, I'd be like, oh, okay, here's more. Oh, Mark Miller, this is awesome. Like, what's going on? You know, Sin City, what's that? Oh, cool. You know, and it's like, that's the gateway drug to get people into the broader spectrum of what comics can be, if you ask me. So, yeah.
Good answer. I like that. That's cool. Also, yeah, David I hope I say his name correctly. David Mazzucchelli, who did the art on those books, the Batman Year One. Just the covers alone, just
yeah, perfect. And he did tons of stuff with Daredevil first. Like he and Frank Miller did Daredevil run as well, which is it's what taught me how to write scripts. I had a collected edition on the back. It had a script from one of the comics by Frank Miller, like typed out, you know, that's just a reproduction of it. And I was like, page 1, panel 1, blah, 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 caption, da, 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 da. And I was like, in my mind, I tried to visualize, well, what does that look like to me? And then I'd flip back and I'd reference what David Mazzucchelli drew. And it was completely different from what I had in my head. And I thought, oh, so a script just has to conjure the imagery in your mind to get you to the place where you know what you want to draw. So you don't have to write a novel. You just write enough to get the idea there so that as an artist, you can be like, okay, from there, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, check it out. It's going to look like this. Boom, 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 boom. And then you're just talking about different camera angles that the artist wants to try and illustrate. Yeah. So that was a real catalyst for me, too, getting started with comic making, which you didn't ask how I started, but that's fine.
That's a fantastic thing to know, though. That's so cool. Awesome. Yeah. Then, you know what, David? Well, I am certain I could probably talk to you for another good hour. So I'll ask my last question, and then people can come and reach out to you and support your Kickstarter and get to know you more if they like. What do you want the people out there to know? About
me or about the book?
Whatever.
I want you to know yourselves. Truly know yourselves. No, I don't know. You can find my comic book on Kickstarter for now. You can also catch me at several different Comic Cons coming up this year. I'm going to be at Houston Comic Palooza. I'm going to be at the Space City Geek Fest, which is also in Houston. I'm going to be in the Comic Arts San Antonio Comic Con, which is run by the Greater San Antonio Area Libraries. So that one's a free one. You don't even have to buy a ticket. I'll be there doing live screen printing with my screen printing partner. He and I are starting a small screen printing company. And yeah, it's a problem. I have a problem. Can you tell I have a problem? I definitely have a problem.
I don't see a problem.
Too many brands in the fire. I am also going to be in Waco at the Central Texas Comic Con with my good buddy Ray Garza, who does Tank McGregor, the Mechanical Menace.
So good.
And yeah, so we're going to be swinging and banging. I got four cons coming up in the next 4 months. So if you want to meet me and you live in Texas, or you want to fly to Texas just to come to a weird, small, tiny little Comic Con and get one of my comic books, if you do that, it'd be really cool. You can also get a shirt printed. I'll print the shirt that you're wearing. You would have to take it off for me to print it, but it can happen. It's happened before, and it's real fun. So yeah.
That is cool. Well, absolutely, David. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. You've been wild and fun. Thank you.
Thank you, man. Thank you for being accommodating with all of our Texas power outages and whatnot. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. Life happens. And for the folks out there in YouTube land, again, check out all the links down below. You can go now to the pre-registry of the Kickstarter page. You can, if not, it's February 14th. The link down below will take you right to the page. And for $5, you can get the digital comic. For $10, you can get the physical. And remember, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of David. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot.
Golden age to present, digest to oversize. Never miss new comic day. Yeah, no surprise. So where's my no prize? Check the letter columns. Can't find issue 2? Yeah. Collector problems, cliffhangers, mysteries. You need answers. When did Batman become Green Lantern? I get it. True believer, not lying. Always up for an awesome summer crossover.